Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to the Netherlands once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel once before. Now, the last time I reviewed a beer from these guys was in the region of a year and a half ago, if memory serves me correctly, and this brewery was actually really quite interesting because they reminded me of one of my local breweries here in Skåne in Sweden. But the last beer we tried was very, very nice, and when I saw that some of their beers were coming out through Systembolaget here in Sweden, I thought, yeah, we need to have a look at these on the channel. So here we are. So looking forward to this one. I've heard this is a nice beer. As I said, I was impressed with the brewery before, so needless to say, I'm quite curious to see what it's going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Nijmegen in the Netherlands, and we're going to have a look at my second beer from Nevel Wild Ales. So this particular beer is called Dwaal. It comes in at 5.5% ABV, and this one is a Witbier with Sichuan peppers and hogweed seed added into the brew. So this should be quite interesting. This is actually the second beer that Neville have released through Systembolaget. The other one was called Alm, but that was actually the one that we reviewed a year and a half ago. So I didn't get a bottle of that one, unfortunately. But yeah, I thought this would be a nice place to return to Nevel Wild Ales. And as you know, I just like trying lots and lots of different beers. So hopefully there are a few more that come up to Sweden from Nevel in the near future as well. But as I always say, definitely nice to review Dutch beers for you here on the channel. If you are more interested in the Dutch beer scene, then you can check out my friends at the Dutch Beer Collective. That's Remy of Beer Geek Holland, Herben of Dutch Beer Geek, Douglas of Beers with Douglas, and then my very good friend Thomas of Thomas Open. I'll put the link to the collective's Instagram in the video description for you below, but do make sure you go and check out their channel. Some really nice reviews, both in Dutch and in English. But yeah, if you want to know more about Dutch beers, they are the guys that you need to watch. But yeah, let's crack on with this one and see what we have. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Nevel Wild Ales, and hopefully we can add more to that list in the near future. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support you give is hugely, hugely appreciated. The whole channel has a geography-based tagging system, and you can check out the playlists of beers from different countries. You will find this one in the Dutch list, and hopefully we can add to that in the future as well. I do need to get the Dutch guys to sort me out with some more Dutch beers at some point soon as well, actually. So yeah, let's crack on and have a little chat about Nevel Wild Ales then. On to my brewery notes. So, Nevel Wild Ales, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Nijmegen, and these guys, obviously from the name, focus on sour beers. But the brewery was founded back in 2014 by Vincent Gerritsen and Matthias Terpstra, who had studied physics together. But during their studies, they started homebrewing as a hobby, and they called their beers Catjulam, but they sold out very, very quickly, and they proved to be very, very popular. And this just kind of stuck in their mind as they were finishing off their studies. But when they did finish their studies, they decided that they wanted to start another larger brewery, and it was this that would go on to become the Neville Brewery. So this brewery, as I've mentioned already, focus completely on sour beers and wild ales, and all of their beers come in between about 4 and 6% ABV. They've got a number of local suppliers in the area who provide them with the various adjuncts that they put in their beers, and they've also got an extensive collection of barrels for aging a portion of them as well. But the brewery is currently based in the Honig complex, but they are planning to move to a new premises within the next few years, and the hope that they have is that they can move to a sort of farm-like kind of premises and create their own food forest and, you know, actually grow a lot of these adjuncts that go into the beers themselves. But as of October 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have brewed around 95 different kinds of beer, and like I said, you know, they're all kind of sour beers. It's sort of like saisons, wit beers, and you know, these kind of things that Nevel are producing. I need to see if they've got something a little bit more malty. It would be interesting to see if these guys do have something a little bit more kind of like brown sugary or red or something like that, but or even a lambic type beer. But yeah, these guys actually remind me quite a lot of Brekeviet here in Skåne, because, you know, they like to experiment with different adjuncts and things in their sour beers as well. So yeah, this was a really interesting brewery. for me when I first encountered them, and to see them up here in Sweden is actually quite nice, because the last one, I think that was one that Douglas might have given to me, because the Dutch guys put together a big box of Dutch beer for me, and I think this one may well have come from Douglas, but correct me on that if I'm wrong, if you guys are watching. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Nevel Wild Ales for the moment. This is a brewery that I would like to go and visit at some point, and hopefully within the next year or two you will see some out and about videos down in the Netherlands. So yeah, let's leave it at that just now. As I say, if you want to learn more, check out the brewery website. You can of course follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and if you're curious about the different beers, you can check out my other review that I did from them a year and a half ago, or you can check out the Dutch guys' reviews of course, and you can check out the Untappd page. But let's get on and actually have a look and see what this beer has in store for us. So yeah, the artwork on this one is actually quite, it is actually very similar to what we had with the Alm before. And of course, Dwaal apparently means like to, in Dutch, it means to wander or to kind of explore a little bit, you know, to roam, something like that. But yeah, it says on the side here, wild Witbier with Sichuan Pepper and common hogweed seed. Dwaal is a herbal and refreshing beer inspired by the traditional Belgian Witbier. I actually can't remember what I paid for this one, but yeah, one thing I did find quite interesting about this is, you know, I've noticed this recently, that there are a lot of similarities between Swedish and Dutch. So you can see kruidig. So yeah, obviously in Swedish we would say kruidig for spiced, but yeah, quite interesting. As I say, 5.5% ABV. I believe this is the fourth batch of this beer, and I think the ABVs have varied on these a little bit. So depending on what year you're viewing this video or drinking the beer, the ABV might vary a little bit. Can't remember exactly what I paid for this one, but this was released as part of the Tillfällig temporary assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden in early October 2022. I nearly said 2018 there for some reason, I don't know why. But yeah, as you can see, nice little bit of smoke on the opening there. But let's get this guy out into the glass and see what we have. You can see it's obviously been sitting for a little bit, because there's quite a lot of head on this one. We'll just need to be careful with that, but I think that is going to go down a little bit later on. But yeah, I can't remember what I paid for this one. Maybe about 40 Swedish kronor, so somewhere in the region of like €4. Yeah, about £3.75 sterling, $4.25 American, just from the current exchange rates. But yeah, I have to say, it does look pretty nice. Let me just bring that round there. So yeah, this is pretty much as you would expect for a wheat beer. So as you can see, this one, it's obviously been sitting for a little bit because the head has quite a bit of growth to it. I think it said on most of them that these beers tended to be bottled around April or May, and we're getting this now 6 months later up here in Sweden. But I'm sure, you know, wheat beers can last that long. They are more kind of malty, yeasty type beers, so it's not going to make much of a difference. Well, it will make a bit of a difference, but it's not going to affect the beer adversely, I guess is what I meant to say. But yeah, you can see it lovely, kind of two-finger frothy. I would say perfect white head on this one. That is going to fade away over the next little while. You can see that the colour of the beer is actually, it does have a little hint of, very slight little hint of amber to it, but if I shine the natural light through it, it is actually very kind of yellow. I would say like a very kind of bright yellow colour, this one. But yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of that head there. But overall, it does look pretty nice. Yeah, good little bit of haziness to this one. Of course, that is mainly going to come from the wheat. And it does say on the ingredients list that there are oats in this one as well, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, that most of the haziness in this beer will come from the wheat. But remember, the colour of your beer is determined by the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining the EBC rating. Length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because yeah, the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar's caramelised, thus you get a darker colour beer. Barrel aging and adjuncts that you put in will of course affect the colour of the beer too. But when it comes to Sichuan kind of pepper and yeah, the hogweed seed, I don't think those are going to affect the colour of the beer all that much. But yeah, it could be interesting to try some more kind of fruity beers from Nevel if they actually have things like that. But yeah, I don't think we need to say anything more about the appearance of this one. Let's take a look at the aroma and just see what we have. That's interesting. I mean, First impression, yeah, you do get this little bit, you do get a little bit of kind of spice to it, of course, but it actually comes across as really nice and smooth and almost sweet, to be honest with you. So, yeah, it's, it doesn't smell that different from a kind of typical wit beer, if that makes sense. The kind of spicy notes that you get out of this are not madly, they're more just kind of subtle. They're not overly prominent, if that makes sense. And I think we said the same about the last Neville beer that we had. Um, that is nice though. I think this goes together very, very nicely actually. Um, so yeah, it gets a thumbs up from me. Absolutely. Nice little bit of hoppy character, nice, good little bit of malty, yeasty sort of thing. The spicy, the kind of almost spiciness and farmhousey character you expect of a wit beer, and yeah, you can get little elements of the adjunct. I will point out as well that I am not familiar with hogweed seed at all, so yeah, I'm really not sure what that's going to bring to it, but we'll need to see. But yeah, let's break down the aroma for you and just describe it a wee bit more. Now, the backbone of this beer, there is a little bit of that kind of dry, woody sort of character to it, that sort of European oaky or maybe beech. No, maybe not beech, maybe more birchy. It's almost got a little touch of spice to it. It definitely has a little bit of that kind of birchy, slightly woody character to it, this one, which as I say, is quite interesting. So, yeah, on top of that slightly woodiness that it has, there's definitely a wee bit of a Jacob's cream cracker. You've got some nice big white bready notes in there. Yeah, woody backbone, bit of Jacob's cream cracker, and then you start to get the breadiness out of this beer. So it is a little bit like a kind of fresh white bread, bread crust that you have in this one. But then yeah, you have a more kind of normal hedgehog roll type bread with this particular beer. So that is interesting. It's you would expect all of these things from the wit beer, and you do get the typical slightly kind of coriander type element coming out of it. And of course you can smell the sort of peppery notes. It's almost, I don't really know the distinction between Sichuan pepper, and I do have a Chinese friend, Ang, who's from Chengdu in Sichuan. Very, very good cook, I'll point out. And I have had the Sichuan pepper stuff, and the spicy food that you get there is pretty awesome. But yeah, the kind of notes that you get out of this, you do get the sort of coriander type quality, and you can get a little bit of an almost, to me it smells like a sort of black peppery type quality. So yeah, the way that goes together is really, really nice. The hogweed seed, I really don't know what that's kind of contributing to the aroma actually. Because I've never smelt it before, but there is, you can just smell this sort of almost wet, slightly kelpy type note to the beer, and I wonder if that's the hogweed seed that's doing that. As I say, never encountered that before. When it comes to the whole, Groot, of course, Groot beers are another thing I'm not overly familiar with. So when it comes to certain adjuncts, I just, have no idea. And that's one of the reasons why I would love to, it's one of the reasons why I would love to review some more of the Neville beers. But of course, seeds are going to give you these kind of, if you just think about seedy bread, it's going to give you that sort of slightly more kind of savoury kind of quality to the beer. And you can definitely get a little bit of that, but it gives you this sort of almost green, sort of planty, kelp, almost, as I say, it reminds me of the smell of like kale or kelp or something like that. This beer just has a little bit of that sort of vibe to it for me. I do get little tiny hints of a slightly butterscotchy, butter candy type note to the beer as well. But yeah, the whole focus of this beer is of course in the kind of malty and yeasty side of things. On the other end, when it comes to the hoppy side of the beer, there is a little bit of presence there. I mean, you get a little touch of a kind of you do get a touch of a slightly earthy character coming out of it. There's some nice floral aromaticity as well, and you do have a nice kind of bright grassiness there. But a wit beer is definitely not the most hoppy of beer styles, so not too big an influence on it, but you definitely can get that. And of course, having a bit in a wit beer, you do want a little bit of that hoppy freshness. When it comes to the fruity side of things, when it comes to the fruity side of the beer, there's not so much unexpected with this one. I mean, you do have a little bit of that sultana, white green, that sultana, white green grapiness. There's also, you've got a little bit of that sultana, white green grapiness sort of thing. There's a little bit of that kind of peary, apricot-y type, dry apricot-y type quality to the beer, and maybe just a wee bit of a sort of fresh green apple or, something along those lines coming out of it too. But certainly, it does smell this, for me, if I was to sum up this aroma succinctly, I would say it smells like a typical wit beer just with some really subtle adjuncts. It does. It's not that I think is kind of what we said about the Alm, which we had before, which was a saison. I forget what adjuncts were in that one now, but yeah, that's the kind of vibe that I think the Neville go for, is they create a solid base beer and then they just put the adjuncts in there just to add to the depth of flavour. And so it's an interesting approach, definitely. As I say, it reminds me of Breakeriet here in Scone. It'd be interesting to see a collaboration between those two breweries actually. But anyway, as I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck in. But I think we should try this one now. So yeah, this one is the Dwaal Travel in English, a 5.5% wit beer with Sichuan pepper and common hogweed seed. Should be good. Slange, skål, cheers, prost. Yeah, that is pretty nice. First impression, it's actually like quite a wet beer. I've not had a wit beer in a fair amount of time, I have to point that out. And the adjuncts really come out in the aftertaste. You can feel the sort of Sichuan pepper further forward on the palate, but the kind of hogweed seed I think sits further back, and gives the beer this almost kind of this herbally sort of seedy type quality to it. Yeah, just that little bit of spice. The spice character really comes out in the aftertaste with this one. But again, that's a solid beer actually. And reviewing things like this that are a wee bit more unusual is always a nice thing. I like beers. We've reviewed 3,300 beers on the channel now. You like things that make you think a wee bit. And this certainly does. Neville is a brewery I would like to review a few more things from over the next wee while and just see what you can do. Learn about adjuncts. That's one of the... I've learned about certain adjuncts over the years on the channel, but not so much about the kind of more spices, if that makes sense, the ones that could be considered more of a spice. So yeah, maybe you should go and spend some time in the Netherlands and see what they're doing over the course of a year or something like that. That would be fun. But yeah. So yeah, the way that this goes together is really very nice. Yeah, and I think the more that you drink of this beer, the more the kind of wit beer side of things shows itself. So yeah, what can we say about that? We'll just break this beer down as we always do. So middle third of the palate, you can feel that the base of the beer is absolutely that nice kind of smooth woody sort of thing. So yeah, you've got that nice kind of dry woody quality forming the base of the beer. On top of that, you have the on top of, and I would say it's kind of a dry oak. It is like a dry oak or a slightly more like birchy something. It actually reminds me of some of the cedar stuff, because in Japan when you age sake, it was quite often aged on cedar barrels. So you do get a little bit of that coming out of this particular beer. So yeah, nice little bit of dry woodiness in there. On top of that, you get a little bit of the kind of crackery type notes, like a Jacob's cream cracker. Then you start to get the bread crust. You get that kind of white bread crusty sort of thing. And then you can feel the nice kind of white bready layer sitting on top of that. And the wheat, of course, that's in there does make that quite dense. So it is quite a dense bready layer that you get out of this. So, yeah, the way that goes together is really quite interesting. Yeah, I like how I do quite like how that how do you say, I do quite like how the kind of the spicy character, because the spices that you get out of this, I think the Sichuan pepper comes out a little bit more. It's just kind of embedded into the bready backbone, the sort of bready backbone of the beer. So toward the front of that middle third of your palate, you start to get the you start to get the more kind of Sichuan-y, peppery sort of things. And to me, it is, it feels like a black pepper. It has the dryness of black pepper, but just a bit more, has a bit more of the kind of red or green pepper type flavour to it actually. So yeah, that comes out just toward the front of that middle third of your palate. But when you go further back, and we talk about that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you can feel a little bit of a bready build up in there, and that's where you're getting the kind of hogweed seed flavour coming out of this one. It does, and it's an interesting flavour to me. It does have a little bit of that almost woody character that you can get out of brambles in a way, but it's slightly herbal, and of course you do have that straight up kind of seedy, grainy sort of thing to it. So yeah, I like how that goes together. Absolutely. So yeah, way that goes together. Yeah, the way that goes together, I think, is pretty nice actually. Yeah, it takes a wee. As I say, the further into the aftertaste you go with this one, it's it really, the spices and stuff come out that little bit more. So I really like, I do really like that about this one. So yeah, the way that this beer goes about its business is very, very nice. It is one that kind of grows on me. It's kind of what I expected in a sense. The vibe you get out of this beer, the spices that they have in here are a bit subtle, but yeah, it does work. I think we've said everything we need to about the middle third of the palate, and the back third of the palate is kind of quite similar. So the woody base is a little bit drier. On top of that, you get the kind of crackery notes there, but then yeah, the sort of white bready layer is a bit taller, and again, it's a wee bit it is kind of a bit drier in a sense. You can feel there is a bit of bitiness from the wheat as well, and the seed is just kind of pushing back into that. But above all of that, you get some of the more airy, yeasty notes out of this one, which are quite nice actually. Um, One thing I'm noticing as well is that under the Sichuan pepper, toward the front of the middle third of the palate, the further into the aftertaste you go, there's a little bit of there is a little bit of a kind of coriandery note coming out of this one. But yeah, back third of the palate, you can feel the flavour is definitely taller, and then as you come further forward, it just condenses down. It just condenses down a little bit, and the flavour and it just squashes together. But pardon me, the malty yeasty side of this one is nicely done. So thumbs up to Nevel Wild Ales for this. This is another solid beer, and it's a different style from what we had before actually. So yeah, let's focus on the hoppy side of things then. Back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward, there's a little touch of herbal character, and as you push toward the kind of front corners of the palate, you have you can feel the herbalness just spreads forward a little bit, and then there's a little bit of a kind of floral note coming out of it later as well. So yeah, get that nice little bit of floral aromaticity coming out of it, and then round the front curve of the palate, there's a wee touch of spice to it as well on the floral side of things. But round the front curve of the palate, it's definitely wetter, and shows a little bit of a more kind of zesty, grassy sort of thing. So yeah, way that goes together, I think, is really quite nice. So front third of the palate with this one then. Border region between front third and middle third palate. Again, you get a little bit of bready build up there, and the base, of course, is kind of smooth and white. Then on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy, fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So for me, the at the back of that front third of your palate, there's a bit of a more kind of strong citrusy type note. So yeah, you do get a little bit of that kind of strong citrusy note on top, but then underneath that, there's a little bit you know, there is a little bit of a more sort of, so yeah, you do get a bit of that sultana white green grapey sort of thing for sure, but as you move further forward there's a little bit of a more apricot note to it and a bit of an oily pear and a bit of a fresh green. There's a little bit of a more kind of fresh green apple coming out of this too. So yeah, the way that that goes together I think is really quite nice. Yeah, fruity wise, it's nice, but as I say, the spicy notes really start to push into that front third of the palate too, which is quite interesting. But to be honest with you, I think we've said everything we need to say about the flavour of this one, to be honest. So yeah, on the mouthfeel side of things, then this beer for me, it's kind of top end of light bodied, bottom end of mid bodied. It's actually quite a refreshing beer. This one. So mouthfeel overall is really quite wet and quite light. In terms of IBUs, it's a bit difficult with this one. I always find this with kind of beers that have this little bit of spice in them. I think there's maybe about 25 IBUs, maybe 30 in this, but you've also got the spice in there which makes the beer feel a little bit dry. So be aware that this beer, to me, because of the spice, it does feel like it could be more, closer to like 50 IBUs. That's the kind of, as I say, the spice and the bitterness working together. But the malty side of the beer is nice and smooth. There's a bit of dryness in there. I didn't pick up any sweetness in this one. I should point that out. Even in the middle of the palate, there wasn't really much in the way of sweetness. Maybe, reflected on it now, there's maybe a tiny, tiny little touch of biscuity quality in the middle of the palate, but as I say, very, very minimal. The fruity side of the beer is nice and wet. Yeah, it's just a really quite interesting beer, this one. As I say, it's just a very subtly spiced saison. So yeah, the way it goes together I think is really nice, and it gets a big thumbs up from me. Another solid beer from Nevel Artisan Ales, or Nevel Wild Ales, sorry, giving them the wrong name. But yeah, I would like to try something that's got a wee bit of like homegrown fruit or something like that in them, from them for next time. That would be interesting. So I need to have a wee look, and I might ask the Dutch guys to get me 1 or 2 bottles from these guys for the next Dutch beer box that we organise, whenever that is. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. So yeah, this was the Dwaal, or Dwaal, sorry, am I pronouncing it right? Yeah, the Dwaal. 5.5% Witbier with Sichuan Pepper and common hogweed seed from Nevel Artisan Ales in Nijmegen in Gelderland in the Netherlands. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Nevel Wild Ales as well. We will be returning to these guys, I'm sure, at some point in the future. But in the meantime, if you're interested in Dutch beer, check out my friends at the Dutch Beer Collective. Check out my social media as well. Check out Nevel Wild Ales social media. And we'll see you soon with more reviews. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and see you guys very soon.